What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up. I'm Bob Wankel. Anthony Sanfilippo's here, and we are getting set for a big weekend against the Boston Red Sox at Citizens Bank Park. Bryce Harper is going to play his first game in front of the home crowd since the 2022 World Series. And Anthony, everything's good, man. Like, it's all positive for the Fightin' Phils going into this series. Good start against Houston, 2 out of 3, went out west, really showed that they can compete with one of the better teams in the National League. They pitched well. They hit well. Bullpen was great. Starting pitching was great. Your boy Aaron Nola looked awesome. It's all good, man.
Then LA happened.
Yeah, LA did happen. That did happen. And the only thing that I can say good about it is that, and we're recording this on Friday morning, early Friday morning. This show would have had a very different tone had we recorded it following that debacle of a game on Wednesday. The best thing that I can say about that series, other than Bryce Harper's return, is that at least they played the first 2 games late, because otherwise I think the whole city right now would be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, it was not good. There was not, I had said to you just before we hit record here this morning that other than Harper's return, there wasn't one player, not one player, who you could sit there and go, oh, they at least played well during that series. It was bad. It was the worst series of the season. It was worse than the opening series in Texas. Pitching was a disaster, an abject disaster, top to bottom. They gave up 36 runs in 3 games. I mean, you cannot give up 36 runs in 3 games. And I mean, other than like an inning in the 3rd game, for the most part, and a nice little 2-out rally in the 9th, they didn't hit. They just didn't hit. So it was like everything. It was a perfect storm of crap that just fell upon this organization in 3 days in Los Angeles. And when and look, all they needed to do, Bob, really was win one of them. If you win one of the 3 games, and let's it just in seriousness, because you played Houston and LA, that's a tough road trip. Okay, that we don't want to lose sight of that fact. But if you come home 3-3 from that road trip, you're like, okay, it's fine. But you come home 2-4, and under normal circumstances, you say 2-4, okay, it's a tough road trip. But at this time now, it's 2-4, where the last 3 games against the Dodgers were a total implosion. That makes it worse.
The game on Wednesday sort of sticks out to me for whatever reason. It's as bad as Monday and Tuesday night. As bad as both of those games were, I just kind of go, oh, okay. And I mean, there are certainly big time problems within each of those games, but I just say, this is going to happen. You're going to have some ugly games. You're going to string together ugly games throughout the course of a season. You're coming off of a fairly emotional series to whatever degree, and a series can be emotional at the end of April against the Astros. Okay, fine. But then here you are Wednesday, and you have a 5-0 lead, and you have Aaron Nola on the mound again. Stop me if you've heard this before. And the Phillies can't add on. There were so many different layers to that game on Wednesday, and I don't know about you, and I know that I kind of skew negative by nature, but you know how you've just seen a story play out before?
Mm-hmm.
Right around the 5th inning of that game, when it was 5-3, they're sort of staving off at Los Angeles, I said to myself, they're going to lose this game. You could just sort of feel it. The at-bats started to kind of get thrown away. They weren't threatening. They weren't adding on. Aaron Nola was sort of hanging on for dear life. I know he stabilized in those middle innings. I get it. But you just felt that game was turning against them very slowly. And sure enough, it did. I just look at it, and again, I think that you could go into a deep dive about, Aaron Nola. I know he pitched so well against the Astros. I would again tell you, though, that it's tough to throw 91 miles an hour and live middle, which he kind of did at times on Wednesday. I know he didn't do that, last Friday. Talk about the bullpen issues. Craig Kimbrell again. You really thought he was sort of turning the corner for a couple weeks. The lineup, just the inability for this lineup to come through with big hits, even early on when they were scoring. They had an opportunity to just lay down 8, 9, 10 runs right off the bat. They couldn't do it. There were some serious problems in that game on Wednesday, and the least of which, you start to look at third base and go, Edmundo Sosa, for as good as he's been from an offensive standpoint, through a month plus, he's not played a very good third base this season. And man, he made a bad play at a bad time in that one.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there.
There's so much to unpack. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself. Like, I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but I actually kind of thought I turned the page on this series. And now that we're working through it again, I'm getting all
getting frothy. You're getting frothy. It's good. It's good.
I'm only 2 sips into the coffee this morning.
It's early. It's early in the morning, and you're getting fired up. I like it.
I haven't consumed the full coffee yet, and I'm getting a little.
It's good.
A little spicy here.
I'll start backwards. Let's start with that error by Sosa, which it wasn't
an error.
Wasn't an error. It was. It should be an error. It blows me away that Major League Baseball scorekeepers are not calling these things errors.
You know how I feel about your like old man on yells a cloud thing, which I think that you have sometimes, but I am fully with you. I have no idea what the scorekeepers are doing this year. That's an error every day of the week and twice on Sunday, man.
But I'll tell you what, it's gotten so concerning with him at third base that people are now pining for Alec Boehm to play third base. I mean, think about that. I was watching the post-game show, and Ruben Amaro and Ricky Battalico were like, I got to put Alec Boehm back at third base, maybe in the 9th inning. It's okay to have Sosa there to start the game, but if you have a lead, maybe you put Cody Clemens at first and Boehm at third. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, how far have we gone down this path that we are clamoring for Boehm to be the third base defensive replacement at third and Cody Clemens at first base? I mean, think about that for a second. But yeah, that cannot happen. And it's unfortunate for Alvarado. It wasn't a great inning for Alvarado, but he was getting out of it. Like he had figured out a way to get out of it, right? Got the ground ball. Turner gets the guy at the plate, and then he gets a line drive right at Sosa. And you sit there and go, well, hey, it wasn't his best outing, but he found a way out of it, and he didn't get out of it because Edmundo Sosa couldn't catch a line drive hit right at him. It's the major leagues, man. It's the major leagues. People are going to hit the ball hard to third base, and a third baseman has to catch the ball. Plain and simple.
I was on WIP last night with Tom Kelly, and he asked me about Edmundo Sosa, and he says, like, what's the deal here? And I kind of wanted to bring it up on this show because let me give you a theory, and then you tell me that it's insane. So he's brought here as a defense first player. He starts to kind of find his stride offensively last season. He's obviously gotten off to a pretty good start offensively this season. But again, we often talk about players being overexposed or maybe taking on a role that is bigger than what they had initially expected. And I just wonder if there's anything to be said for the idea that he was thrust into a role. It's a huge opportunity for him from a personal standpoint, from a career standpoint. He kind of goes from an important role player to the guy playing third base for the Philadelphia Phillies, contender of the National League. And maybe he just is sort of not letting his natural ability take over, and he's sort of thinking through things a little bit right now. And we always use the word pressing when it comes to offense. I just wonder if there's a little bit of a pressing situation going on here defensively, which we typically don't talk about and we typically don't see with players.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the case. I mean, keep in mind also when he came here, Bob, we were told how good of a defensive player he was. Now that was all built around him being a shortstop. He is a very good defensive shortstop. You got to see it a little bit in the game where Turner was the DH, and Sosa got to play short. Played really well on the balls that were there, right? So there's no question he's a good defensive shortstop, but that doesn't necessarily mean that if you're really good at shortstop that you can be really good at third or really good at second. You might just be passable at those positions. And I think that that's kind of what it's become here. And it's unfortunate. I mean, he's got 5 errors? Well, that would have been his 5th error. That in such a short period of time, and a couple of them have been costly. And so it's really an issue right now. I mean, I just think that, look, he can go out there and Bobby Dickerson can work with him and he can hit him a ton of ground balls and he can keep plugging away at it. You don't just suddenly overnight become good at fielding a position that you don't normally play. I'm just the way I look at it. We've seen it. Look, we've seen him how hard has Dickerson worked in the past with Rhys Hoskins at first base? How hard is he working with Bryce Harper right now and trying to make Bryce Harper a first baseman? They're spending a lot of time with these guys. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen overnight or even happen at all. You might just not be cut out to play that particular position.
Well, for better or for worse, they're going to have to figure it out. He's going to have to figure it out, because we can sit here and talk about Cody Clemens as a late game defensive replacement and then trying to slot Alec Bohm back over to third base. But we would probably have to admit here, before this happens, I could absolutely see a scenario in which Alec Bohm gets shifted across back to third base late in the game. Here's a guy now that hasn't been playing there every day. We know that he's not a plus defender to begin with. You're now yanking him back and forth. I don't think that that's going to end with a positive result.
No, I'm not certain that there is a solution here.
And this kind of goes back to the obvious, which is, the Rhys Hoskins injury has hurt this team. It has hurt this team through 32 games in a number of ways. You see the lack of power. I know that that's picked up a little bit, but there's still a little bit of a lack of power. It's completely jumbled their bench depth. It's completely messed up their defensive alignments the way that they would want to optimally do it. It has had a lasting impact, and not to state the obvious, but it has hurt this team. Listen, my thing, I think, after kind of letting that series breathe, sort of, is that this all flows through the starting pitching. And I have a lot of numbers here, and I'm going to share them all today, and I'm not going to stat everyone to death, but I think that they're relevant numbers. And my thought is that it all flows through the starting rotation. And as obvious as that may be, I look at the numbers and I see a 4.82 ERA from the starting rotation this season, which is 18th in all of baseball.
Doesn't it bother you that there are 12 teams worse than 4.82?
What looks worse than this? How could it be worse? So, and sometimes I think, like, for instance, on the flip side of that, and I guess that this sort of illustrates the point, you look at the bullpen ERA and it's even worse, right? I mean, their bullpen ERA right now is the fourth worst in all of baseball. It's 5.59. And there was a 2-week stretch where they were unhittable, 0.83 ERA from April 16th to April 30th. And they still have the fourth worst ERA in baseball, but there's a difference. And for me, the difference is this. The starting rotation on a game-to-game basis, if the name Zach Wheeler isn't up on the screen, I go, I don't feel great about this right now. At least out of that bullpen, I still find that there are 3-4 guys that on any given night, I feel pretty good about coming in the game into an important spot. I know that Soto's had his number of blow-ups. I know that Dominguez has not been Sir Anthony Dominguez to this point. Alvarado's obviously been awesome. Brogdon's had some hiccups, but I still trust all of those guys. Kimbrel's the one guy that I'm just not sure about at this point. But that rotation, like, I don't feel good about any of it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I see what I look, and I'll tell you that I even add Wheeler into it a little bit. Like, I'm not comfortable with any starter at the moment.
But wouldn't you say that his last 3 starts, he's more or less looked like Zach Wheeler?
He's looked, but he's also had a couple of blow up innings in there, no differently than what Nola has done, other than the fact that he's had his fastball up to the level it should be at, and Nola has not. I mean, and that's the difference. Maybe that's the difference.
Maybe that's why I look at it and say, okay.
Certainly, I mean, that's certainly the difference between the two right now is that, Wheeler has looked like Wheeler and has had a couple of bad innings. Nola has not looked like Nola and had a couple of bad innings. And I think that's why there's more concern with Nola than there is with Wheeler. Because you're right. You can't, if you're Aaron Nola, you can't be throwing 91, 92. His breaking stuff is still very good. And it's still, there are a couple times it hasn't been as sharp as it can be, but it's still good enough. But if you're only going to throw a fastball at 91 miles per hour, you're going to get beat. You're going to get hit.
I mean, listen, we talked.
And Wheeler's throwing 97 still, right? Yeah. So, I mean, at least that's the positive on that end.
We talked with Caleb Coffin last show, and we sort of, it was one of the topics that we hit on. Hey, Aaron Nola, look at what he did against the Astros. And yeah, he's not throwing as hard as he used to, but he's really starting to find himself with the pitch clock and the rhythm. And we know that he's a pitcher by trade. He's not a thrower and all that stuff. And that's all fine and well. And I don't dismiss that. I think that there's very much truth in that. But you better be pinpoint. Like you better have that mix. You better hit your spots, because if you don't, you're going to get beat. And that's kind of the unfortunate part of this 90. And I know that we're not talking about Aaron Nola as a guy that throws 96, 97, but there's a difference between 93 and 91, and it's real.
The bigger problem is that his secondary pitches, which are good, especially his changeup, his changeup is what, 87. Well, if you're throwing 91 fastball, 87 changeup, that's not a big enough gap in my mind, right? I mean, it needs to be, you need to have more on the fastball. And I look back at that start, and look, I'm not bothered by the home run, because it's not a home run anywhere else. It's a fly ball out everywhere else. I was bothered more by the hard hit balls down the line, both left and right field. And even the one to left field that what's their second baseman's name, Vargas. I thought that one was going to be more of a home run than the one that was actually a home run. So like there were hard hit balls. I mean, the triple to Taylor is. I can't believe that I got a problem with Rob Thompson, because I thought that you got the stabilization innings out of Nola at 5-3, and it was like, okay, he did what he had to do. He had a couple of
pushing him into
batters,
the seventh was,
but pushing him into the seventh was. I mean, he obviously was not himself in the game. But if you take him out after 6, I think that you're like, okay, we got a 2-run lead. He got us through 6. Yeah. We're okay. And then he gives up a triple, and then you take him out. And of course, the run scores on a sac fly. But there's just the triple to Taylor is the one that
and Nick Castellanos didn't really do him any favors either.
No,
I mean.
Defense has been an issue all over the field.
That's what's crazy right now. Like I feel like we have done a good job on the show of being very structured and kind of like, okay, we've talked about that. Let's move on. Today, I feel like I'm ping ponging everywhere. Like, just a quick aside, Kyle Schwarber in left field against the Dodgers this week. Like,
terrible.
I know there wasn't like the boner play of the week or anything, but there were just so many balls where I'm like, oh my God. He can't move right now. And I know that they got away with it last year, but he looks like a different player defensively in terms of his ability to cover ground right now than he was a year ago, which, by the way, was not elite by any measure.
Yeah.
There's something off there. There is. That looks like a massive liability, and that is one thing that they're going to have to deal with now that Bryce Harper is back.
Yeah, and that's why I think that they're so pushing this Harper playing first base thing as hard as they are. Because I think that they realize that they can't get away with having both of those guys in the corner outfield every game, every day, all 9 innings. I think that they realize that they have to be able to have the flexibility to DH those guys. And if they can't, it's going to hurt them.
All right, now here we go. Ping pong back to me. I'm not done with the pitching yet. I mean, so I agree with you on Nola. I hear you on Wheeler. That, though, still I don't think is the biggest issue here. And we did the Bailey Falter conversation. And at the end of the day, like, I think my book on Bailey Falter is, do I want him in the starting rotation? No. As a 5th starter, as a 6th starter, whatever. You're right. Like, the Phillies aren't going to miss the playoffs because Bailey Falter has a 5 ERA. Like, that, if that's why the Phillies miss the playoffs, then okay, the Phillies just aren't good enough. Taijuan Walker has been awful. And I don't know what I'm watching that other people that have been a little bit more kind in their assessment are watching. I've heard up and down, some good, some bad. I think he's been woeful. Like, I feel like that's like a Ricky Pitalico right there. But like, I don't know what the hell people are watching. I mean, he's been abysmal. The velocity's been down at times. He's walking people at a higher rate, almost 2x the rate that he did a year ago. When he's in the zone, he's fat. He's getting pummeled. He's been non-competitive. The whole thing just reeks of like, this is not a good fit. Now, there's plenty of time for him to turn it around. I'm not going to label it bust, or anything like that. But the injury cloud, the forearm type, the whole thing just doesn't smell right.
No, not at all. And I think that the reason that you had a couple people say that it's been up and down is because he did have those 2 back-to-back starts that were, I guess what we would say were encouraging. And they were encouraging. It was one against Cincinnati, one against the White Sox.
2 really great offenses too.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's off. I mean, but keeping those lineups down. Woo.
Yeah, but I mean, but the point was that they were better than the others. Yeah. And then he had the game against Seattle, which all of a sudden he had forearm tightness after a blow up inning. And then, finds out that he's fine, doesn't even need an MRI. He's okay. He could stay on turn. All right, fine, great. And he goes out to LA, and it's not like his velocity was down, because his velocity was right where it normally is, right? He was just, his location was terrible. And then he's walking guys at an alarming rate. He's got 17 walks in 28 and two-thirds innings so far. That's the killer. I mean, yeah, he gave up 8 hits too. He gave up 8 hits, gave up 3 home runs. He's got 7 home runs hit off him in that same amount of time. It's not been good overall. It really hasn't. And it's certainly a concern for me right now, because look, I don't know how long you can go where a guy's getting touched up the way he's been getting touched up by teams. I mean, he can't find a strike zone, giving up home runs. You shouldn't be in the rotation if that's the case.
So to recap the Phillies starting rotation right now, you have Aaron Nola, who you don't particularly trust. You don't think he's going to kill you, but you just don't know what you're getting. You have Zach Wheeler, who you think is kind of hovering around what he might be, could be, what he has been, but he's not quite there. You have Taijuan Walker, who's been a disaster. You have Matt Strahm, who, as good as he's been, is a 4-inning guy, 5-inning guy, and then you have Bailey Falter, who is 5 innings, 4 runs. Like that's your starting rotation. And obviously you have Ranger Suarez, who's making his way back. He's probably about 2 weeks away. But I would even caution that, as good as Ranger Suarez was down the stretch for the team last year, and he's a good pitcher, and certainly becomes instantly the Phillies' 3rd best option in this rotation, assuming that Nola and Wheeler, pitch to the level that they can. You don't know what you're going to get there. He's behind schedule. He's coming off of an injury. He's been delayed. How deep can he get you? How effective is he going to be? Does he need 3 or 4 times through the rotation before you really see what he truly is? Now you're pushing mid-June. It's not necessarily a cure-all, and it kind of almost opens the door. Like, I laughed at it back in February and March, the idea of like Nick Nelson potentially competing for a rotation spot. At this point, I would say it's better than even money that Nick Nelson starts a game for the Phillies this season.
Not only starts a game, I have a feeling that he might be the guy that jumps in.
Yeah,
jumps in ahead of Falter, because the one thing that we keep asking about him and coming back, and they keep talking about building him up and building him up and building him up with length and pitch count and everything else before they get him back up. And it's like, well, why are you kind of doing that? And they're like, well, because we want to have him to be available to be a starter if need be. If not, he'll just be a long man. Okay, fine. But why are you focusing on getting him to be a starter? Unless you have a worry that there's something in your rotation right now that's not good enough, and that's your next best option.
Yeah.
So to me, I think that I think he's replacing somebody as soon as he's ready, and not necessarily just coming in here to be the replace Andrew Vasquez, because in all honesty, Andrew Vasquez has done his job as the long man for this team, like the mop up guy. And pitching multiple innings. I mean, if you really break down Andrew Vasquez, which was somebody we thought would be, anything for this team this year, he's 1.93 ERA over 14 innings. Like, he's doing what he's being asked to do, and not no high leverage. But
where would the Phillies bullpen ERA be without Andrew Vasquez?
Right, exactly.
Some are asking. Bailey Falter's his fate in terms of his role probably hangs in the balance of what happens with Taijuan Walker. Because you assume that we know that Matt Strahm is not long for the rotation. We had the team's pitching coach tell us as much 6 days ago, and Rob Thompson has articulated the same. So there's one spot, but Suarez comes back. That's probably maybe an even swap. And then Nelson comes into the picture. Is Nelson in there for Walker because he's hurt, or because he blows up, or what happens? Or is it going to be Falter that gets the bump and Walker stabilizes? I do have one more question before we wrap this up. And before I get to that question, I do want to note, we do the interview with Caleb Cotham, who, again, like, much appreciated for him coming on. I thought he was great. A lot of good insight. I wish there were 10 other things that we could have gotten to. What a time for him to come on, huh? Like, the heels of the Aaron Nola start, Matt Strahm's rolling. The bullpen was lights out at the point that we had talked to him for about 2 weeks. Fast forward 6 days later, and like, this rotation's a mess. What's up with this bullpen? The pitching is just bottom third from top to bottom. Oh my God. Like if we were scheduling this interview today, I don't want to say it would have had a different tone, but it would still have been, hey, thanks a lot. And good job on some things. And we would have highlighted some positives, but there would have been a lot more negative to talk about had we been doing this right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
His
timing was pretty
impeccable.
Good.
It was impeccable. That being said, with Taijuan Walker, to me, he's the biggest wild card in this whole thing. So my question to you is, how long do you let this go? You've committed to him for 4 years, $72 million. So I don't think that we're one more bad start away from Taijuan Walker being bumped out of the starting rotation. But we know that this team is built to win, that there is an urgency to win. So is it July 1? Is it August 1? Is it the trade deadline? Like, if he is not injured, how long do you go with this?
That's a great question, Bob. I mean, he's going to throw, I guess, Sunday against the Red Sox, and then he gets a start out in Colorado after that, and then they come home for the Cubs and the Diamondbacks. I think he would start against Chicago before we get to the Atlanta and the Mets series. And to me, that's a watermark for this team, and it's a watermark for a lot of baseball teams because Atlanta and the Mets surround Memorial Day, and Memorial Day is always a thing where you talk about where our team's at on Memorial Day. A lot of times that lets you know what the season's going to look like. So to me, I don't necessarily know how long it goes, but if I'm the person in charge, he gets another 4 starts maybe, and then you reassess. And not to say that you're going to get rid of him, but maybe you find a way to say, all right, look, you're going to go to the bullpen for a little bit, and we'll figure it out, and we'll get somebody else to start for you. But so I think you got to give him, again, because of the contract that he's under, and as long as he's healthy, I think you got to give them those few starts. But by the time you get to those 2 series against Atlanta and New York, which everybody's been kind of looking at as kind of like, okay, finally they're going to play the big teams in their division. I think you have to know what you have at that point, and make some decisions there. So I say about 4 more starts to kind of get this figured out for him.
I'm with you on that. That is probably the time frame that I would be working within myself. So I think that adequately is the scenario at the moment. I think that we've gotten that all taken care of. The pitching, I think we've kind of hit on here.
Yeah, I mean the bullpen. We didn't really dive into the bullpen, Bob. It started to show a little bit of leakage against the Dodgers, but maybe you sit there and say 1 series, that's it. Let's see, maybe they rebound and everything's okay. But yeah, you said Kimbrel's the one guy. It's like, all right, let's hope that was just a bad situation against them, and come back and he's back to what he was the 2 weeks prior. But yeah, I think that the bullpen is okay for right now. Let's just wait and see. I don't have a major concern there. But I do have a concern, like you said, about starting pitching. So, but yeah, we can move ahead to the lineup, which I know you want to get to as well.
So there's been a lot made about the lineup construction, and you and I have shared some text back and forth. Kyle Schwarber hitting leadoff. Both of us, I think, are very against that. It feels like a cop-out to me. That's about like when I look at Kyle Schwarber hitting leadoff, I feel like it's a nod to a veteran player that Rob Thompson has a lot of respect for. And it's just it feels like a cop-out solution, and it's the wrong one. You look at him and you say you just cannot have a guy hitting 191 in the leadoff spot. But I will say this, like, here's some numbers to consider. As good as Bryson Stott's been, and I feel like that's the disclaimer I put on him every time we talk. Bryson Stott's last 15 games, he's hitting 218 with a 271 on base percentage. Kyle Schwarber's last 15 games, he's hitting 160 with a 300 on base percentage. So when it comes to guys getting on base, Schwarber's actually over the last 2 weeks getting on base at a higher clip than Bryson has been. Trey Turner, we see the struggles there and what he's gone through the last couple of weeks. So any criticism of Rob Thompson's lineup construction, I think, is valid and fair, but I think it also has to come with an acknowledgement that there's not a perfect solution in play here right now.
No, there's not. The only thing, and this is, I wrote this and then I shared it with you and you kind of liked it, is that, ultimately we think and we believe that with Bryce Harper now being back, that putting him behind Turner in the lineup, it's going to, get Turner to see some better pitches than maybe he's seen so far to start the season. I mean, he had the home run out in LA. He did have a double that was a kind of a bloopy double, but he did have a couple of hits against the Dodgers. So maybe you start to see a little bit of that kind of turning back around for him. And if that's the case, right now, your three best guys that you can rely on would be Turner, Harper, Castellanos. So why not go with them at the top of your lineup? 1, 2, 3. Let a starting pitcher have to face your three best hitters, and that's apologies to Brandon Marsh, who's had a really nice start, and his numbers are off the charts so far. But I mean, he's more of a middle to later in the order kind of guy. Why not go with that? I mean, Turner's batted leadoff before. Harper's hit second before. Castellanos has hit third before. Like these guys are going in. We're not asking them to do something they've never done before. And they've had success in those spots. And then at least you could get Schwarber into a place where, look, if he's hitting 180, hitting 190, whatever, but at least he's going to run into some home runs every once in a while, right? And so if that's the case, you have a better chance of there being guys on base when he does, as opposed to leading off a game when if he hits a solo homer, that's great, but it's only one run. I just think that I think that your lineup would be better in a more traditional setting with this team, because it's not a team that has so much power as it has in the past. And it can't rely, and you could say, well, if we're going to hit all those home runs, who does it matter where anybody hits? Well, really, no, it doesn't. But if you're not going to hit all those home runs, then yeah, you have to kind of go with a little bit more of a traditional look. And I think that that's probably your best bet at this point. Also, batting Turner behind Schwarber, Bob, if Schwarber's on base, it takes away his ability to run. Not just steal bases, but go first to third, go, score on a single or on a double, a bloop double. Like all that gets taken away because he's got to chase behind a guy who can't run.
It's amazing. It's like the Phillies go out. They go out, they get Trey Turner, and it's like he has all these tools and all these things that he can do. And the whole idea was that he's going to hit leadoff. Like we're bringing him in to finally solve the leadoff problem. Yeah. And by the way, man, with these rules, he's going to steal 50, 60 bags and they have all these tools with him, and it's like they brought him in to do certain things, and they're not utilizing him the way that they had planned to. And it's kind of weird when you consider that. And then you look at Kyle Schwarber. To me, he hits fifth in this lineup.
Yeah.
No matter how I do the lineup, who's at the top, who it's in the bottom, I always come back to Kyle Schwarber hitting fifth. And I know that there's an argument to be made having Schwarber hit leadoff. It sort of protects the bottom of the order. So if it Sosa, or if it ends up being Bryson Stott or whoever you have hitting at the bottom of the order, because Kyle Schwarber looms on that wraparound back at number one, you have to attack those guys and it kind of lets them succeed. I get that argument, but you, as you noted, I think have to build the lineup to optimize it around Bryce Harper. If he is going to be Bryce Harper, how do you get the most out of the lineup at that spot? And Kyle Schwarber hitting leadoff, it just makes no sense to me.
None.
I don't get it, other than we did it last year. We like Kyle and we think it's the right thing to do. Like if you want to go that way, okay. But when you look at it from a purely run manufacturing optimization of the lineup, it makes no sense.
None whatsoever. At least not right now. And the other thing that we've discussed off air, and I think that you are in firm agreement with, is look, when guys are struggling, and I'm not a believer in bench a guy to send a message if he's struggling. I'm cool with letting a guy figure out his hitting problems in games, like get out there and figure it out. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to stay in the position that you're in the lineup to figure it out, right? I mean, I think that you can move a guy down, and it worked last year, if you remember, actually with Schwarber. He was struggling really badly going into, during May, and they moved him down on the lineup, and then he started to hit, and then June happened, and he was, the player of the month in baseball in June, because all of a sudden he figured it out, and then they put him right back at the top of the lineup, and he was awesome. So yeah, you can have guys kind of figure it out in games, just not in as high leverage spots in the lineup. And I don't understand why they are reluctant to do that after 100 and some at bats. I mean, at this point, it's like, okay, this is the time of year to do something like this.
And what have I always said about lineup construction? I've always said that this conversation sort of bores me. And I know that baseball people really like to dive in and they're like, they love the puzzle pieces of the lineup. And when it's their team and they watch it every day, they're like, this is how I would do it. This is how it should be done. And more often than not, I would say that it doesn't truly matter over 162 games. It's more about the each individual player. Do they produce? Do you have enough good pieces? It's not about squeezing out every last bit of optimization. But this lineup, I think especially the conversation about the lineup is so key. And I keep coming back to this. We talk about runners in scoring position, how many guys the Phillies have left. And I know I noted this about a week or two ago, but forget the batting average with runners in scoring position, which, by the way, is dead middle. It's 16th overall. They're hitting 251 with runners in scoring position this year. But look at the damage that they're not doing with runners in scoring position. They have the 26th OPS in baseball with runners in scoring position this season. They have hit 4 home runs with runners in scoring position. There are only 2 teams in Major League Baseball that have hit fewer home runs with runners on second or third this season. They are not doing damage in big spots right now. And when you're not doing damage with guys on base, with runners in scoring position, that is where the optimization of a lineup becomes so important. And right now, I think they're giving away obvious things.
They really are. They really are. And it's funny, Bob, because when you look at this from the grand scheme, right, the overall picture through 32 games, and you sit there and say, and you look at it, the Phillies are 15-17, right? And you say, well, man, that this is not the start that we wanted. And then you look at the standings and go, okay, well, they got off to a slow start here, but so does a lot of other teams in the league, and they really are kind of hanging in there right in the mix with everybody else in this in the playoff race so far. It's totally fine. But then you get frustrated and say, if they would just have done a few of these things, hit with runners in scoring position, get a few more runs home, instead of being 15-17, maybe you're 18-14, and then you're
do you blame this pitching staff more than the lineup for being 15-17?
No, I don't.
And then not only that, and I'll let you go in a second here. I'm sorry. But
That's
only that, what is this team ceiling? Like, if you're a fan right now and you're kind of annoyed at a 15-17 start, which I know there are so many people, and by the way, this annoys the hell out of me. Like, I tweeted the other day, I'm like, there's a lot of blame to go around, and people are like, oh, the sky's falling. Like, oh, like you're so I'm like, dude, come on, man. Like, you can be critical of your team. I know that they're your heroes and they went to the World Series last year, and they deserve a round of applause for that. But like, it's okay to say this isn't good enough. They need to tighten this up, and they might be fine, but also that sucked. So my question to you is, if you're a fan and you are a little bit agitated and you are realistic about this thing, what is the Phillies ceiling right now? Like, should they be 17-15, 19-13? Like, what is it?
Well, I mean, yeah, we did this exercise right at the beginning of the year, and we had them going 17. Both of us had them at 17-12, I believe it was, through April, after 29 games. And then if you asked me, I would have probably said at the beginning of the year, okay, look at that Dodgers series, you probably lose 2 out of 3. So 18-13 is kind of where I would have had them coming in. They're 15-17, so they're 3 games behind where I thought they would be. Where do I put the predominance of the blame? I put the predominance of the blame on the fact that the lineup has not produced when it can. Even in games where, like you said, like Wednesday, they got the 5 runs early and then they just stopped competing at the plate. If they tack on another run or 2, it's a different ballgame, right? You only need another run or 2 runs after that second inning, and then all of a sudden it's a whole new game and a whole different outcome, and they probably win it. I think there are a lot more of those situations than there are, oh my God, the pitching staff blew that. Right. So yeah, I put more on the lineup. So what's their ceiling? I mean, I still think that there's enough here to be a team that is second place in this division.
Yeah, I don't even top wild card
teams. I mean, I think that ceiling is still there, but they got to start showing it. They got to start showing it. Otherwise, we're in for the same situation we were in a year ago.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even mean it like, what's the ceiling moving forward? It's just like, what have they blown? What have they already cost themselves? And
About
so
3
you
games.
said it. We went through, where did we think they were going to be at the end of April? And I think, you said 17 and 12. Is that the number
Yeah.
of games that it would have played out to be? And
Yeah.
then I would have had them 2 out of 3 as well, losing 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers. And so, yeah, like I think they're about 3-4 games off the pace right now. But to your point, here's one thing that we do, because it's almost like the celebration of mediocrity. We went through this with the Eagles a couple of years ago in this city, where the NFC East just sucked so bad that we were sort of applauding them for winning the division, even though we knew that they were a bad team. And it's not quite the same, because we have the Atlanta Braves at the top of this division. And I don't care what anybody says, the Braves are the best team in this division, and I don't think it's particularly close. That doesn't mean that the Phillies can't beat them again in the playoffs. Doesn't mean that they can't get hot at the end and get to the World Series again. It doesn't mean any of that. I'm not saying that. But the Braves right now over 162 are going to run past the Philadelphia Phillies this season. I'm sorry. I just don't see any. I think the Braves win this division by 10 plus games.
They're the best team. They're the best team in baseball.
They're the best team in baseball. And the Phillies right now
are not
13th to 16th best team in baseball, So, but I will say this, like, if you're trying to like look at this from I guess a more positive viewpoint, you say, well, hey, I know every team right now is having their struggles. Like, let's just go through the National League standings and pick it apart. And you start with the East and you say, well, the Mets are a disaster. They just got swept by the Tigers. Good call by you, by the way, because I know earlier this week you said that they were about to hit the skids. The Marlins are spunky and have some interesting parts, but they're playing 500 ball. The Phillies are 2 games below. The Nationals, we know, stink, although they've played pretty well the last week and a half or so. The Pirates are coming back to earth. The Brewers have been terrible for the last 2 weeks now. The Cubs are coming back to earth. The Reds suck. The Cardinals might be the worst team in the National League, which I'm not crying for them. And then we know that the Dodgers are going to be good. The Diamondbacks have been pretty good. Padres have underachieved to this point, playing a little bit better lately. The Giants suck. The Rockies suck. So the National League, other than the clear division leaders,
really the Braves and Dodgers, in all honesty, other than those 2 teams,
it's Braves and Dodgers and everyone else.
Yeah.
So you can go through the whole league and say, oh, come on, guys. Like, you're taking a hard look, a critical look at the Phillies. They were missing their best player until 2 nights ago. Let's pump the brakes. They're getting Ranger back. We know they have some good pieces that are underperforming, and I'm with all that. I am. Like, I still see the ceiling here. If you said right now, Phillies in the playoffs, yes or no? Yes, yeah. But they got to get going. And Bryce Harper, I kind of give him credit. Like, he just comes back and he gets on base 5 times in the second game. And what does he say, though, afterwards? He goes, we can't lose. I'm paraphrasing, but if we're going to be the team that we want to be and go where we want to go year after year, we can't lose games like this.
Yeah.
And he's right. Like, that is about as critical of a comment as I've heard a Philly make about his team in the last 5 years.
Yeah. No, he's right. And that's the thing. And that's why I remain, mostly optimistic, is because when you're now going to have an MVP caliber back in there every day. Right. And that's going to change things in my estimation. And it literally, he almost helped them pull it out, with his hit in the 2 outs in the 9th. And then Castellanos had a great at bat with the walk, and then Stott gets the bloop single to tie the game. So but that was all dictated by Harper, right? I mean, Harper getting the hit to kind of say, okay, we're not done yet. Even though we just blew this lead, it's not over. And then you saw the emotion out of that he had when he got home, scored the run, and he did the, we pump, fist pump, and, out to Stott and everything. Like, that's contagious, man. Like, that kind of stuff will play. And so that's why I still have an optimistic view overall going forward with the Phillies. But that doesn't mean I can't sit here and recognize that there are many issues that really need to be cleaned up, and they are issues that can be cleaned up. That's the thing, Bob. It's not like you look at it and say, yeah, oh man, these things just keep happening because they're a bad team. No, these things keep happening because they're not focused on being a good team right now. Yeah. And that's those things need to be rectified, and they can be, but the players have to be, look, I'm certain that Rob Thompson and his staff are addressing these issues with the players. It's not like they're just glossing it over and not saying anything. I mean, as a matter of fact, if you watch the very end of the game against the Dodgers, you see Paco Figueroa grabbed all three outfielders in the dugout and was talking to them right there together in the dugout. So there was obviously something that he did not like with the way they played the outfield in that game. We saw it. Castellanos was not good. Schwarber was not good.
Can't imagine what he didn't like.
Right? I mean, like we saw it. But the fact is it happened right there in front of you and on the television screen, and it happened in the dugout. So it is being addressed. So it's on the players to do their job now at this point, and they have to do it. If they clean up these stupid little mistakes, they'll be fine. If they don't clean them up and they continue to fester, then we're going to have a 500 baseball team.
Yeah, I think that this team, I said 90 in the beginning of the season. They're a little bit off that pace. I believe that this front office will remain aggressive and try to plug holes as they move forward. I think they're committed to that, and I think that that's a big part of my projection, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I will say, like, I just think I believe in the mix, and I don't know if that's because I'm intoxicated by what we witnessed last year, and maybe I still have a little bit of that in my system because this is very much a different year. But I still think with everything that we've seen and the way that this has transpired, you're not looking at a team and saying this team sucks or this team is going to win 77 games this year because they don't have enough talent. I think you're more frustrated because you realize, they are better than this, and you kind of expect them to rebound and get there again. I want to talk about one more thing before we get to one last thing. Alec Bohm, I'm still so bullish on him, and he got off to this great start, and we're talking about 300 hitter, maybe finally realizing that 25 home run ceiling. And the last 2 weeks have just been especially bad for him. He's hitting 164 over his last 15, no homers. What are you seeing there, and how alarmed are you by his recent performance?
Yeah, it's a little perplexing to me, Bob, because I think he's a guy that still has a really advanced approach at the plate, especially for a young player. And I just think it's kind of one of those things where he's gotten into a bit of a funk, which happens in baseball, and he hasn't been able to figure his way out of it. And I think that there's a lot of frustration in his at-bats now. I mean, you're starting to see him slam the bat a little bit when he's, knows he's flying out or popping out or something. And you can see him roll his eyes on a strikeout, like almost like, oh man, I should have hit that, or I should have swung at that, or whatever. I just think it's a little bit of a mental game with him right now. I don't think that there's anything that's real major mechanical. I don't think that he's like really late on stuff, or pitch recognition's not great or anything along those. I just think it's one of those, hey, he gets a couple hits, it'll change the confidence level, and he'll get back to being what he is. I am alarmed by the fact that he's not even putting good contact on the ball right now. That's the one where I go, okay, like that needs to. I need to see hard outs, and then I'll be like, okay, it'll be better. So maybe that's the first step in the recovery here, is that get a couple of hard outs first. But yeah, it's almost like he comes up to the plate. At the beginning of the year, it was like he comes up and you're expecting him to do something good. Now he's coming up and you're expecting him to not do anything good.
Yeah, in a way, it almost kind of reaffirms what we were just talking about, where you feel like there's more upside to this whole thing. There's just so many guys in this lineup right now that have the talent, have shown this season at different points that they're capable of doing it. I believe in him as a hitter overall. There's just so many guys going south, just really struggling all together right now. And you see what Bryce Harper does when he comes in. You talked about it, changes the energy. He obviously lengthens the lineup. And you just wonder, they kind of get their footing with him in this lineup, and do things start to turn? And that's what they're going to have to hope for, because, you look ahead at this weekend, and we talked about the Boston Red Sox, and, they're not very good. Well, you look up and all of a sudden they're playing very good baseball lately.
Well, they're hitting.
Yeah, they're hitting, and the starting pitching hasn't even been particularly good for the Red Sox.
No,
but they are hitting, and you look at the vulnerability of this Phillies pitching staff right now, and there's, I think, a little bit of a reason to be concerned about this matchup. And then beyond that, what Toronto's capable of, and it feels like the Phillies just cannot, dating back to my childhood, it's like they just cannot figure out the Toronto Blue Jays. So it's a tough stretch here coming up before things lighten a little bit.
It is a tough stretch, although I'm I think maybe a little bit more confident with going into this Red Sox series. I don't think the Red Sox are as good as they've been playing. They've won 6 in a row, and obviously I don't think the Phillies are as bad as they're playing, having lost 4 in a row. So I don't see those streaks stretching. You know what I'm saying? Like I think this is a situation where it really plays well for the Phillies to take 2 out of 3 in this series. The Red Sox starting pitching is absolutely dreadful. It just is. This is an opportunity for the Phillies to take advantage of some subpar pitching. Now the Red Sox have a little bit of the back end of their bullpen's been solid so far with Kenley Jansen and Chris Martin and Winkowski. I think that those 3 guys have been pretty solid for them. Even a guy like Cutter Crawford in kind of like a early role if he needs to come in has been okay. But beyond that, they don't have any pitching at all. And so this is one where if you get through this weekend and they're still, the Phillies aren't hitting after facing this pitching staff, it's got to make you wonder a little bit about where they are. So I like the Phillies to take 2 out of 3 against the Sox.
All right, well, let's jump into one last thing then before we wrap it up here.
Well, I wanted to go, you mentioned earlier in the program where you talked about my old man at Cloud takes, and I did write one this week for Crossing Broad, and I wanted to kind of get your take on it and I'm going to tie this into a second issue that cropped up with a former Philly yesterday. So the one that I wanted to talk about first, of course, is the Bryce Harper brace situation, where he and the Phillies made an appeal to Major League Baseball to, if necessary, and that's the key, if necessary, to allow for a few extra seconds for him to put this brace on once he's on base so that he doesn't, risk injury. And Major League Baseball said no, flat out. And their justification is we don't give individual players, make rules for individual players. And then they went out and said that they consulted with all these orthopedics and athletic trainers before setting these rules. And I guess my thought process is, how many of those conversations were about putting an elbow brace on for a player to protect him? I guarantee zero. Zero. I guarantee that those were all talks about like I said in the story, the oven mitts and the wrist and the hand and wrist protectors when guys get on base. They did not sit there and say, oh, well, we're going to have a guy come back who needs to put on a big elbow brace and he may need an extra 10 seconds. So I have a real problem with this, and it extends even further. And this is the second part of the story that I want to get to with yesterday. Zach Eflin is pitching for the Tampa Bay Rays, and the umpires made him take his wedding ring off on his glove hand. No real explanation. They told the guy he's got to take his wedding ring off. I mean, what have we gotten to in baseball where you can't protect your best players, or any player for that matter, who want to just put a piece of equipment on that a doctor is telling him he needs to wear? Do we care about player safety, or do we care about pulling our average time of game down all the way? And then secondarily, telling guys they have to take their wedding rings off. It's outrageous to me what baseball is concerned about and not concerned about. And the sport continues to aggravate me more, Bob, on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't really have any additional thoughts on the Eflin situation other than that when I saw it, I kind of rolled my eyes and said, well, that's ridiculous. But, I mean, Harper, I think that there's so many different layers to it. One, it's just this is not a one-size-fits-all situation. And in the case of a guy putting on an elbow protector within the normal context of an at-bat, like, hey, the traditional gear, there doesn't need to be a special exemption made. But when you're talking about the injury that Bryce Harper's coming off of and the actual piece of equipment that he's wearing, it's different. And so there has to be special considerations. And it's not, oh, well, hey, we got to give Bryce Harper because he's a big name player special consideration. It's the situation. It's the injury. It's the piece of equipment that he's using that deserves the special consideration. But at a larger level and just on a surface level, it's amazing to me that Major League Baseball is more interested in getting that 12 seconds out of the game than it is protecting one of its biggest stars, who is must-watch television. It helps ratings. It helps grow the game, helps market the game.
Exactly.
Major League Baseball is better with Bryce Harper on the field. So it is baffling to me that that's the approach that they take. And you wonder to what degree does the players union get involved and say, like, yo guys, what the hell are we doing here? And shame on the players union if they were in consult, if they were in those conversations with Major League Baseball and orthopedists when they were going through these procedures, because if they green lighted that and said, okay, yeah, we're cool with it, then that's no good. I cannot imagine that was the case though.
No, I don't. I almost certain that was not the case. And it's crazy, and I put a tweet in that story that somebody had put out. I wish I had thought of it, that, Major League Baseball has no problem with all these fake pitch com issues for pitchers to, figure out a way to delay the game because they can't stop it any other way. Okay, no problem. We'll let those slide. But heaven forbid we protect a player on base. This is not even an advantage for an at bat. If anything, if nothing else, Bob, this is probably an advantage for the opposing pitcher because
Bryce Harper on base and you're trying to buck momentum.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if anything, it helps the other team. So it just blows me away that they are so worried about the time and not worried about the sport.
But you know what it is? They are the time of games, the average length of games is the thing that they are so proud of. They are so proud to say we're down 27 minutes a game. Look at what we've done to the game. The speed up has helped. And the players, they don't love it. Most of them don't love it, or at least don't love it across the board. They have certain issues with certain rules, and it varies from guy to guy, team to team. But Major League Baseball is going to put that up on the mantle and say, 2 hours, 30 minutes. Look at us. And they do not want anything that is going to interfere or inflate that number. And it's clear as day that is what they are fixated on.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's going to be their ultimate downfall.
Yeah. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it's going to be their ultimate downfall. So
I'm with you. I am with you on that. Well, listen, we turn the page here. Tough week for the Phillies. No question about it. Very, very different tone today's show than we had last Monday. And that's good because that means that our next show, it'll all be good again. And everyone will be happy, right? Isn't that how it works?
Absolutely.
What are you guys all worked up about on Friday? See, it's all good. They swept the Red Sox. So we'll see what happens here. But thank you, as always, for listening. You can find us on YouTube. If you, don't watch us, you can watch this beautiful show. My background changes because my Wi-Fi in my office is horrendous. So
I was going to leave it as an Easter egg, and we say see if people noticed that we switched sides on the screen and that you ended up in a different location halfway through the show.
So you can check us out on YouTube if you haven't, but also Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your shows, you can listen to us there. So thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to everybody on Monday.